It's Monday. That means it's time to talk about the very worst comic books of the week. And this week I decided to torment Doc with a revisit to Tim Drake Robin by Meghan Fitzmartin. You say, Wes, he's already had a look at that a few times. Yes, but we have a new artist in here. And will that change the tide for Meghan Fitzmartin's Tim Drake Robin? Well, no, because it's already been canceled, but does it at least make it better? Bam, Doc, how you doing, buddy?
I hate you for making me read this. Somehow it actually gets worse.
It does feel like a worse comic book, even though the art is significantly better in here. There's no logic to the story whatsoever. Nothing really makes sense. Obviously, we'll get to that in more detail in a few minutes, Doc, but like Meghan Fitzmartin is absolutely the emperor's new clothes here and exposing herself as just an absolute hack who knows nothing about superheroes or really even storytelling basics.
Yeah, I was going to say, this isn't even a story. This isn't even a superhero problem here. This is basic plot progression problems. Nothing that happened here made sense. This was like, and then the comic. Like everything just happened because it was the next thing to happen. There was no rhyme, no reason. It was just incomprehensible nonsense.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the art first because it is an upgrade over what Riley Rossmo is doing. This is Sergio Cunha on art. Certainly fits more into the DC Comics universe, although it definitely has an anime flair. And it does feel like he's gone out of his way to continue to feminize the two male protagonists in the book.
Yeah, he definitely did. They look more effeminate throughout the book, like every page. It's not as bad as Twinkle Toes Riley Rossmo by any stretch. They actually look like human beings. I actually really, really enjoy this art style. I know it's got a little bit of an anime flair, but for a teen or early 20s, younger character comic, this fits very, very well. It kind of reminds me a lot of like older Impulse when Scott McDaniel was on Nightwing. It had a good flair to it that really, really works, in my opinion, for a character like Robin. I like the art.
It is definitely wasted on such a bad story here.
I don't know if there is not an adjective to explain how nonsensical this story was.
Even the story itself, we'll get into how it's formatted. It's a 7-course meal. It's like appetizers, hors d'oeuvres, entree, salad meal to get you through the thing. And it's like nobody that reads DC thinks this is cool or clever or even interesting whatsoever. It's just absolutely stupid. And you can see the monumental mistake that whoever brought Meghan Fitzmartin in to be a creative voice in DC Comics were making, that they couldn't spot somebody that couldn't tell an actual superhero story and has to go to these really stupid gimmicks that they're just so 10 fucking years ago.
I mean, look, it's another fucking woman in comics obsessed with food and needs to write a story based on that. Bitch, you can't even get the 3-act structure right. Stop trying to do some meta thing with a 7-act structure. This wasn't a meal. This was you walking into your kitchen, grabbing everything you can and just throwing it into a bowl. That's what this was.
And then taking a dump on it and calling that salad dressing.
Exactly. This is you being an idiot and a buffoon that can't even tell any degree of story, much less something as complicated as a 7-act story.
So this is supposed to be like a really big Bernard-centric story that really explains the relationship between Bernard and Tim Drake here. And it turns out, just shockingly, Doc, that his parents are just ultra mean. They wish he'd never been born. They do not support his lifestyle. They don't like him being here with Tim Drake. And I'm thinking, could we get Sina Grace on this book? It feels like he did this story somehow better in Iceman. I didn't think we could get a worse storyteller than Sina Grace until Meghan Fitzmartin came along.
This was take every single worst parts of Sina Grace's idea of a plot in Iceman, or in that, what was it, Rockstar and Soft Boy that we watched, that we had to read a while ago. This was everything that was bad about that and so much worse. The only thing that could have made this worse, there's nothing that could have made it worse, actually. All it was every trope of bigoted parents that don't like their kid being gay.
So they end up going to dinner. Tim and Bernard, the parents show up and they're very upset with him. And then Firefly shows up at the restaurant to start burning stuff down. Tim Drake runs off Even though he's got no bag with him, he clearly doesn't have a Robin uniform underneath his clothes, comes back as Robin. And we do find out that they are under the influence of phobia. So you could think, well, maybe that's not what the parents mean. And these are actually Bernard's worst fears coming to life. And maybe he's not hearing it right coming out of his dad's mouth. But Bernard says point blank to Tim Drake during the story, I know my dad thinks every one of those thoughts. I just never thought he would say them to me, just to make sure we didn't get confused during the story. Maybe the parents weren't completely evil.
The way you would just explain this plot summary was better than the plot actually worked out in the comic. Obviously we need to make the man an unrepentant bigot that will never, ever, ever change his mind all the way through to the end of the story. And then the mom, though, is the one she's the soft one that wants Bernard to come home. That is about as cliche as you could possibly get in 2022. You know what? Honestly, when they did it in the second X-Men movie with Bobby Drake's parents hating the fact that he was a mutant,
it was more nuanced.
It was more nuanced than this. And that was done in like a 4-minute scene in the movie.
It was pretty over the top as well. There's no nuance.
It was.
At all. And the story itself. So at the center of this, we have to know that Bernard, Tim Drake, has changed his life because he accepts him. He doesn't hate him like his parents. His parents are evil. They're unrepentant. They cannot be saved. Tim Drake comes back and saves people. Then they walk away. Tim Drake is in his suit or whatever, and then he realizes it's phobia for no reason whatsoever, other than when Bernard says, I can't believe my dad said that, goes back, is immediately back in his Robin costume, finds out it was phobia in Firefly working together, and then they walk home, leaving everyone to burn alive.
At no point in this was any heroics done by the ostensible superhero in this comic. We have no idea how the parents even got out. Oh yeah, Bernard saved his parents and got them out.
Because he's the good one, Doc. Not only is Bernard willing to forgive his parents and save them despite their despicable actions toward him in this story, he's a fucking physicist. He's a biologist, and he's going to be a 5-star Michelin chef because Bernard is goddamn perfect.
Yeah, Bernard is the superhero in there. When we see Robin run back wearing his suit and then magically end up back in his costume once he walks into the restaurant, ends up captured immediately. You find out that there's like dozens of people still in this restaurant that he didn't save the first time. Bernard's the one that has to get in there and save him and his parents. I mean, granted, though, he doesn't save any of the other people because they just all died.
And Bernard had a bad night, Doc. What was Tim supposed to do? Save those people when he needed to console his boyfriend because he's got bigoted parents? Oh, my God. That's worse than anything.
God forbid the hero save people. Peter Parker and Mary Jane spent like a decade where Peter would somehow have to disappoint Mary or MJ, and it would cause rifts in their relationship. And she'd have to remember, hey, he's still a hero. But this entire thing was Bernard being validated throughout the entire thing, but his inner monologue telling us, Tim will fix it. Tim will fix it. Tim always fixes it. Tim will make it better. What the fuck is wrong with this whole goddamn story?
Feels like there's a codependency thing going on here.
I feel like there's a very, very serious mental illness thing. Meghan Fitzmartin is girl Tom King. That's it.
Hey, look, the good thing is Tim Drake, he got himself a catch. The physicist, biologist, chef, ain't a superhero. All Tim has to do is he's just like the arm candy now.
Yeah, he's just got to be the pretty one. Bernard even has to go all like gobsmacked when he sees Tim Drake buttoning the sleeves on his shirt in his suit. And Bernard's all like, what was that fucking the hound in the cartoon where his mouth hits the floor and his tongue rolls out?
Pepe Le Pew?
Yeah, or no, it wasn't Pepe Le Pew. It was the coyote, or it wasn't Wiley.
Pepe Le Pew would have been raping him.
Yeah. Pepe would have been like grabbing him and trying to molestify him. No,
I know what you're saying when the eyes come out.
Yeah, the bugging eyes, the jaw that hits the floor, the tongue that rolls out like a carpet. That's what he looked like just seeing Tim get dressed. And I'm pretty sure that's just some weird obsession from Meghan Fitzmartin.
The good news is, despite the art being better and the store being worse, and it really can't go anywhere good, at least they got smart and actually canceled this comic book. We talked about this one in depth. Tim Drake, Robin, finally canceled, along with Batgirls. Obviously, Tim Drake, Robin was the bigger atrocity, the bigger crime against the comic gods. If you haven't seen this, all the details, there's also a link in the video description.